Today we'll be looking at 2 new spider models, a whole bunch of animations, and 6 new levels according to our graded exposure therapy approach. You can find all of the code for this as well as timestamps for this video in the description below. Hey again everyone, and welcome back to my Dev Diary series. This is episode 8 now, I think. We are still developing a virtual reality exposure therapy game in Unity for the Oculus Rift. You might notice straight away that the format of this Dev Diary is going to be different to my previous ones, mainly because of time. The videos I was producing before would take 2 to 3 9 to 5 working days to make those things. That's not any of the programming, mind you. That's just, writing a script, getting all the footage of the system, getting the footage of me saying everything, and then cutting it all together would take, like 2 to 3 working days. Given that you already have a 9 to 5 job, having free time to actually work on this project is, pretty precious, I guess. So I want to try and prioritize the actual project a bit more. Making those videos is a lot of fun, and doing all the editing and putting in little visual gags and stuff is definitely something that I have always enjoyed. But yeah, I need to actually prioritize getting the actual system done, because that's the main bit of this project, is the actual system rather than the dev diaries. So I'm pretty much just gonna ramble at you guys. We're gonna walk through everything that I've done since the last dev diary, what's been added, what's been changed, what still needs improving. So yeah, I'm just going to basically walk you through it like this, and we're both going to be seeing the same thing. I have got some pre-recorded footage of the actual system being used, so that I haven't got to talk to you with my big brick on my face, basically. So yeah, we're just going to go through it. So firstly, you'll notice that we have some new spider models now. So originally we just had these ones. Wolf spider is the model, or not just model, but in real life they're called wolf spiders. And we also have tarantulas and these little guys called jumping spiders that actually jump. Not in the system, but in real life they jump. So there's basically a principle in exposure therapy that says that you shouldn't have a very specific version of your stimulus over and over again, because what that does is, while it might make you a bit less afraid of the stimulus in general, it only really works against that specific version. So say, for example, if I just had the wolf spiders in there like we had originally, because we're repeatedly showing them over and over again without showing anything else, it's training you to not be afraid of basically only that specific spider. So if you then, ran in to a more hairy one in your kitchen or, garage or whatever, then you wouldn't be trained against that. It wouldn't work for you. So what we want to do is have a more varied sort of collection of spiders, which is why we now have these 3 models instead of just 1. Adding these new models in highlighted how little I know about Unity's animation system. And this has bitten me in the ass before pretty hard. You might remember, if you saw it, one of my previous dev diaries, I talked about the animations on the spiders were basically overriding the physics. So the physics engine would say gravity is turned on, the spider has mass, so the spider should translate downwards because it's falling, right? And what was happening was the animator on each spider was overriding that and saying, I'm currently playing an animation clip, so sorry, gravity, but this is what we're doing instead. And it was basically making my spiders fly around everywhere, which was not ideal. Spent a long time trying to fix it. Ended up being literally some checkbox in the animation menu that I just didn't know about. So this time, I've had an issue with the animations, and you're going to love what the fix was. Let me show you how it looked before I fixed it. So let's take a spider to watch. That's a good one. Okay, watch this guy. So you might notice that the animation clips are all playing just slightly too long. So once this spider here is finished rotating in the scene, he is still playing his turning animation, right? Even though he's actually standing still. It doesn't last very long, but you can see it's there. And again, when he starts walking, he's still playing his idle animation. So he has those few frames of just sliding forward, right? And yeah, that was causing some issues, especially when what was basically happening was the animations were kind of getting stuck, and it was playing the wrong animation entirely at the wrong time. This is one of the videos I got when I was trying to fix it by just forcing the next animation to play regardless of the current one's state. So that's where you'll kind of look a bit janky and a bit like their legs are suddenly snapping to new positions. And what you might have seen there, this guy, he's walking forward but still playing the turning animation, right? Which is just wrong completely and looks super, super jank. I know that it is a polish thing, and it's not, at this stage, really an essential component of the system to get right. I'm just conscious that I'm going to probably end up building, I have since then ended up building more on top of and around this animation system. So I don't want the foundations of it to be really jank, or it's going to cause even more issues. So I really wanted to fix this. So what the actual issue was, let's take just this turn right animation clip and let's play it just once through. So that's turned our spider 45 degrees roughly from where he started. Now that's fine, but what if we want the spider to turn in the scene just 10 degrees? He'll turn those 10 degrees and then he still has the rest of his clip to play. So that's why in those videos I was just showing you, that's why he was sort of still turning when he shouldn't have been. And one of the things that I tried was, as I said, basically just snapping that spider and say, regardless of the current animation state, now you're walking. And that's why it was looking so jank, was because the way that his legs are here, when he's walking, those limbs will suddenly teleport and appear somewhere else, right? So it looks totally wrong. I tried all kinds of fixes for this. I tried, say we wanted the spider to move half of 45 degrees. What I would basically do was I would just play the animation clip but at twice the speed, right? So that by the time that he has reached his target rotation, the clip would have finished playing, basically. And you can move on to the next one. The obvious problem with that is that if the spider wants to turn just 1 degree, then he has to play the entire animation clip really, really fast, even though he's basically not rotating at all. So that just didn't work. I tried a bunch of other stuff for much longer than I care to admit. You can see when the last Dev Diary came out, so yeah, that's how long I was stuck for, pretty much. What the fix ended up being was, if we look in, I didn't know this whole menu existed for a start. So there's a whole animator window where you can see the different animation states. And if we actually play the thing, then we can actually see, how we are progressing through each animation state, which is really cool. I did not know this was here somehow. I just wasn't Googling the right thing, apparently. Anyway, if we look at this turn right animation again, the problem was that I had this checkbox ticked, and that was all it was. When you have that checkbox ticked, it basically says that the animation actually has to finish playing before we can start a new one. And because it was checked, that's why I was getting all of those issues. So yeah, spent embarrassing long on this, and then found out it was literally one button press to fix it. So now I know that's the way it goes sometimes. But now the animations actually look much better. They still need some polish in some places. But yeah, overall, definitely an improvement. So we have different animations for each model we have. The models that I've been using, that is from the asset store, they're not free ones, but they're not super expensive either. Learning how to actually make, all the geometry of the models and putting the textures on the mesh and making the animation rigs and stuff, that's a whole nother project right there, to be honest. Which I can always do at a later point, but I think it's better just to get it working with models and animations that have been pre-built. I think is probably the best strategy. So each of these models has a different animation controller. Now it's the pathing controller on each spider that basically tells it which animation to play. So when the pathing controller says start translating forward, it also says start playing the walking animation. Now, I didn't want the pathing controllers to have to know or care about what type of spider we are, or what type of animation controller we have. So yeah, pretty simple. I just made an abstract animation controller, which is here. So the 3 separate animation controllers all derive from this abstract one. And this means that the pathing controller, so say here, can basically just call that and just say what animation to set it to. So the animation, or the pathing controller, sorry, doesn't have to know what type of spider we actually are, which definitely makes things much simpler. And that means that I can change, make individual tweaks on each animator, because some of them do have little quirks, so they behave a little bit differently than the other ones. I can make little tweaks on each animator, tweak the speeds and stuff, without affecting the others. So it's the whole modularization thing that I'm going for. Just makes the code base just orders of magnitude easier to maintain. So the next thing to show you guys will be the new levels that I've added. So again, there's a principle in exposure therapy called graded exposure, where you basically take the treatment in levels, right? So you start at level 1, which is the least intense. So if it was a spider, say just a spider sitting, not even a real spider yet actually, you'd start with even just say a sheet of paper with a cartoon picture of a spider on, right? And that gets the patient sort of thinking about the stimulus and kind of mentally engaging with it a bit. You don't want to start off by locking them in a room full of tarantulas, right? Because they'll freak out and probably have a nervous breakdown and be scarred for life and stuff, right? That's not ideal. What you want is to slowly ease them into it and step it up gradually over time, rather than just going right in at the deep end. So to mirror that, I want 10 levels in this system, starting off really basic, not intense, and then ending with actually being able to pick up the spiders directly and actually play with them with your actual hands in the environment. So I've added 6 levels since last dev diary, 10 in total. I think I already had 1 or 2 before. I think I just had that one before with grabbing the spiders and seeing if they were like red or blue on the underside and then putting them in the right box. Now we have 6 more. So the levels that I've added, let's find our footage. So level 1 is not this one. I haven't actually made it yet. Level 1 is just going to be like an intro level. No actual stimulus yet. You'll just be sitting in the environment. This is where we can take some baseline measurements from the user. How anxious are you feeling today in general? How anxious are you feeling in this environment right now? And we can use that for some sort of data analysis stuff that I'll talk about later on. This is level 2, where we just start literally just with this, with a laptop in front of you and just a very fake cartoon image of a spider. So gamification for this level is there'll be a voiceover basically talking about the spider, giving you some facts, and just some sort of comprehension questions on the screen to make sure you're actually listening, right? You do the first 3, the image changes to a more realistic spider, so sort of gradually stepping it up. More questions, more scoring. We're playing the correct sound if you get it right, the incorrect sound if you get it wrong. This is more or less all that there's going to be, I think, to this level. Mechanically very simple. I'm much more interested in getting the therapeutic process correct than by making the game mechanically interesting. I do want it to be mechanically interesting, but I don't want that to come at the expense of the actual treatment, right? So I think as it is, this level is probably okay. We start introducing more mechanics later on and making it more interesting and, more engaging. But unless I can think of some more stuff, there's not necessarily a whole lot we can really do just in this stage of just showing like a static image. There will be more later though. So that's level 2. Level 3 is where we introduce an actual model of the spider. So again, same thing, there will be a voiceover that talks over this, giving you some facts on each type of spider. So just what spider is this? Another fact. You do the first 2, and then the spider model changes to a scarier looking spider, basically, which just sits in the tank. The voiceover will say, like, this spider won't go anywhere, it will just sit in the tank, and, you're free to look around it, kind of thing. Changes again to what, in theory, I would imagine is what most people would find the scariest one, which is the tarantula. So again, building it up gradually, right? So you might have noticed that these this sort of whole question answer thing is the same as the last level. Now, again, looking at modularization, I don't want to write the same thing multiple times, right? So I've basically made that whole question answer system its own modular component. So what we do, we have this questions manager. It has this present question function. It takes the manager of the level that's currently active so that it can basically say, if you get it right, then tell the level manager so it can give you some score and play the right sound and stuff. It takes a question prompt, and it takes a correct answer, and it takes a list of incorrect answers. We roll a 3-sided dice, I guess, to say which of those buttons is the correct answer going to be on, and then the other 2 buttons get the incorrect answers. So you can't just keep clicking the same button again. It's like the whole joke of the if in doubt, the answer is always C on a test, right? Well, it doesn't actually work if the test is written properly. And all we do to basically use that is we just make our list of incorrect answers, make our correct answer, make our question prompt, and then send that off to the questions manager. And that basically all works in this nice modular way. So we haven't got to keep on writing it. So that's number 3. Number 4 is where we start getting a bit more interesting. Now, this level isn't finished yet. I do want to make it a bit more mechanically in-depth. But this level is an attempt to have the user start engaging more directly with the environment, and in a sense with the stimulus, but without actually having to touch it yet. So we have a tank. You remove the lid, and then, okay, spiders don't eat fried chicken, right? But the thing is, what spiders do eat is like bugs and cockroaches and stuff, right? And that's a different phobia. So I don't want to have a bunch of cockroaches running around that the user also has to get over their fear of for the sake of doing this level. So for now, I'm using fried chicken. I might keep it, I'm not going to lie. I kind of like it. I think I can probably just make a joke of it in the voiceover. Inject a bit of humor in there maybe isn't a bad idea. But for now, it's fried chicken. So what we're doing here is basically picking up the chicken and feeding the spider with it. So if we have the chicken over the spider, then he'll sort of notice it and react and stand up. And that just makes it feel a bit more like you're actually interacting with a real spider, rather than just it staying still and not really responding to you. So yeah, again, we're having the user interact a bit more directly with things, but we're not actually making them pick the spider up yet. Again, pretty mechanically simple. There's no real way to get any of this wrong. So what I want to do is have a few different kinds of food to give it. And it will randomize on the screen, and it will say, You know, this time feed it chicken, or this time feed it a banana, or whatever. And if you get the right one, then you get a point. If you get the wrong one, you lose a point, or you just get no points. So just mechanically a bit more engaging. You have to be a bit more, you know, alert, and engaging with it a bit more, thinking a bit more. I think is where I'm probably going to take this one. But fundamentally, it's pretty much there. Something that took a while to get right was the animations, again, surprise, surprise, on the tarantula as he sort of stands up and sits down. So something that I am doing is I am using the animations in definitely ways that were not intended. So let's try and actually find the animation originally where I've sort of got this from. Right. So this is, according to the original package that I got from the asset store, this is meant to be the threat, quote-unquote, animation, which I guess is the spider trying to be like intimidating, right? What I've done instead is basically say that's just the spider standing up to eat, and I've copied this a few times, so I have one that plays forwards and one that plays in reverse. So in our animator, we go from idle. See, I know all this now, it's great. We go from idle to stand up, and when we do that, that basically means that we are going in the forwards direction, right? We can go back from stand up to idle if you move the chicken away, like while he's still standing up. But he stands up, so he's playing that stand up animation like this. And then we are basically, just for eating, we're basically just looping the bit where he was sort of at the top of his stand. So here. So I've just taken like a very small segment of that original clip and just looping it over and over again so that he's sort of still there, but his little peripalps, I think maybe the word for those little things, kind of still twitching like he's trying to munch something, right? And then when you want to sit back down again, we can't go back into the standing up animation because we're already standing up, but we can go back to sit down and then back to idle again. So this is where that animation just plays in reverse, basically. And I like to think that looks, you know, not perfect still, but I think that looks pretty alright, I think. So, next level. So, now the spider is outside of his tank, and I want him to be able to move, but I don't want him to be able to move outside of player control yet. So what I'm doing is I've basically put another canvas down with the laser pointer on the table for this level, and you can point at it and the spider will basically rotate himself towards the target that you're putting down. So again, spawning some of that lovely fried chicken on the table, and the objective of this level is to basically guide him to the chicken, and if he gets the chicken, you get a point. Again, I think I can do the same type thing where, you know, there's 3 different kinds of food, and each round it basically says, go for this food, not the other food. You might notice that the spider is growing each time he gets some chicken. And again, that's kind of to keep sort of gradually amping it up a bit. So the more you progress, the bigger the spider gets, in theory. Or the bigger the spider gets and the scarier he gets, in theory. Some people do find smaller spiders scarier. When I was doing the what is now the prototype, which at the time was just called my dissertation back at uni, the testing that I did, some of the test participants said that the smaller spiders were actually the ones that they had the biggest anxiety response from, interestingly. So that's something to sort of bear in mind going forward, I guess. Anyway, yeah, so he grows. Something that you'll notice is, look how fast his legs move when he's walking forward here, right? So because at this point in time, he's a smaller model, his legs need to move faster. He needs to animate faster to make it look like he's animating properly, basically, because he has to move his legs faster to cover the same distance. Whereas when he's much bigger, his legs move much slower. Playing that animation is slower. It's still not perfect, needs some polish still. But yeah, playing that animation slower because he is bigger now and doesn't have to move as fast to get from A to B. So that's number 6. We missed number 5, so I haven't built that one yet. But what I think I'm going to do is basically have what I had for level 6, but instead of having the spider loose on the table, I'm going to have it like on a wall or something, so that mechanically it's the same, but you haven't got to have the spider right up in your face just yet, so you can have it a bit further away. I think that will be a good stepping stone from having the spider in the tank to having it running around loose. So level number 7 is where I want to have the spider at this point not under player control anymore, but I don't want the spider to move completely randomly. So what I've decided to do is say the spider will walk out a set shape, and the question that you'll be asked is, which shape is he walking? So it randomizes a new shape each round, and the spider will walk one of those shapes, and you have to basically watch the spider and tell the system which shape he's walking. So this makes you engage with the spider in that you have to actually watch it. You can't avoid it and look away. You have to watch it long enough to get a sense of what kind of shape he's walking. So here you just saw him do a right angle again. So he's walking into a square shape, which should be one of the answers on the board. Square, yeah. And then you get a point for getting it right, and you get no points for getting it wrong. That's pretty much the gist of that level. Again, there's a lot of polish to do on animations here. It's not looking quite right, but fundamentally it's pretty much there. So how this works, rather than hard coding each vector and angle and stuff, each different position in the shape the spider has to walk out, what I've done is basically put down these little node marker things so that I can basically easily position out I guess the vertices, the corners of each shape. So we've got, say, pentagon here, square, etc. And the spider that we have in the scene basically has all of those nodes assigned. So we'll start off with the manager for this level. So we start off with a big list of all the shapes that we could possibly do. The start of the round, we pick one of those shapes out of that list, and then we'll remove it later on from that list, so we don't do the same shape again a second time. We'll pick a shape, do the same thing with the questions manager, so we say which shape we've chosen, we'll say which shapes that we're not choosing. I forgot to mention that there's only ever 2 incorrect answers on the screen, but if we pass the questions manager a whole list of incorrect answers, it will just shuffle those and pick 2 random ones to display. So we send that all off, remove the shape that we already picked from the list, and then call the spider's start shape root function. So that sets the index of the target node to -1. So that's the node that it's currently turning towards or walking towards. So what we do is, if that node is set to -1, which it currently is, then we basically say our target node is the index of the nearest node. So say, let's get our squares back. Say we're here, and say that's the second node, so 0, 1, 2, 3. We need to know that our nearest node is the second one, so that we can then increment that and go to our third one, or if it's at the end of the index, then we can reset back to 0, and that lets us basically trace out the shape properly, if that makes sense. So yeah, we turn our spider towards the node we're currently facing. Once we're within a certain angle threshold, we start moving towards it. Once we are at a certain distance threshold, we stop moving towards it, increment the target number, go to the next node. Is basically what that's doing. All of the code for this will be in the repo, which should be in the description down below. So yeah, that's that level. So our final one we have to show is this one. This one's going to change a lot, but this is one of the later levels. So the previous level was just to basically hyper-focus on the spider and make sure you know exactly where it's going, which is something that you might notice yourself doing in the real world. You know, if you're in bed and there's a spider on the wall, you might want to, you know, focus on it and keep track of it and make sure you know exactly where it is all the time, right? And what this level was meant to do is to basically train that out of you a bit. And the objective here is to actually look up at a screen on the ceiling. It will print out a bunch of numbers, and then you have to keep focusing on not the spiders but the ceiling, adding up the numbers, and then giving it the answer. So yeah, this is a way to bring a bit more variation. You're not just looking at the spiders, you're looking at something else, trying to sort of make your brain operate and do other things while your stimulus is, you know, active in the room with you. So again, same deal. If you get the answer right, you get a point. If you don't get a point. I'm not going to go into the way this level works too much. It's pretty simple RNG. We generate our first number, which is our correct answer, and then we roll a 3-sided dice to say, will that number be in the middle of our answers? Will that be higher than both of our incorrect answers, or lower than both of our incorrect answers? Again, so that you can't just keep on picking the middle one, right? And then we're passing all of those to our questions manager again, and that's handling all of that. Each round, we increase the number of numbers that are shown. So round 1 might show 4 numbers, round 2, 5 numbers, and round 3, 6 numbers. Just to, again, sort of increase the difficulty a bit as we go. There's some code that handles, you know, the timing, showing each character, stuff like that. But again, you can have a read through all of this in the link below. So the reason that I chose this whole like number adding thing is because I wanted to make the user have to look at the whole sequence, right? They can't just quickly glance up and glance down again. So that was the thinking behind it. The limitation with this is that because it does sort of require this like arithmetic, it might not be particularly accessible for people. I don't want, you know, people to feel demotivated because they, you know, their brain is too busy to focus on these numbers enough to add them up properly. So what I think I'm going to change this to instead will be, rather than numbers, it will just be like images, like a house, a car, a duck, or whatever, right? And then the question will be, which one of these images was not shown? So that way you have to look at each image to see which one out of the incorrect answers wasn't actually there. And that way you still have to look at the whole sequence, but you haven't got to do that same kind of arithmetic anymore. So I'm thinking that should be a bit more accessible to people while mechanically still being, you know, just as in-depth. That pretty much wraps us up for what I've added since the last update. There's level 9, which you guys have already seen. That's the one that I demoed last time. In that level, you have to pick up spiders from the table, look on the undersides and see which color they belong to, and then sort them into the correct boxes. The one that I want to have at the very end, I think, haven't totally decided on this yet, but I think the one that I'm going to have for level 10 is going to be also a laser pointer at a surface to guide a spider around a maze. What I think I'm going to do is have all of these little guys running around here, have a maze on the ceiling, have the user, player, patient, or whatever guide the spider through this maze to like above their heads, and then press a button that will make the spider descend on some silk. They have to then reach out, grab that spider off the silk, and then I guess the game gives you a point in some way after that. I think that's pretty much as intense as I can make it, while still being semi in the bounds of realism. Obviously, it's VR, so I could have 50-foot spiders if I really wanted to. Maybe that's something for a bonus level or something, who knows. I don't want to give people anxiety attacks or anything, so I'm a bit hesitant to have proper big fantasy, type spiders. But yeah, that's, I think, pretty much as far as I can amp it up. You have a bunch of spiders on the table that you have to, try and just make your peace with and not really look at, while guiding a spider on the ceiling and then, having it descend. There's a lot of stuff going on there, I think. That should be a pretty good way to top it all off. As for the code base, the architecture is kind of okay. I showed you the controller for the path walking level earlier. This is a bit of a mess, which is part of the reason why the animations on that particular level look so unpolished. A lot of this code is copy pasted from just a random walk and avoid controller, which isn't great. I should really have a central place for a lot of this stuff, and then just pass parameters around if I want to have little tweaks, that kind of thing. So yeah, I'll fix a lot of this stuff up. A lot of the animations need polish. Add some more in-depth game mechanics. I still need to work out exactly what the environment is going to be. You'll have noticed that this time the environment is all sort of dark and much blacker. It was sort of bright white before. That's for no reason. I just wanted to make it easier on my eyes. 3 a.m. the headset was getting kind of bright with the brilliant white walls everywhere, so I've made it this more eye-friendly color. But this will all change. This will all come out at some point. I want to get all the mechanics in first, and then build the environment around the level, rather than try and fit the game mechanics into the environment, if that makes sense. But yeah, so what I'm thinking is maybe I want it to be an option, have some choice for the user. So maybe have one scene that is, inside a therapist's office or something, and then one that is outside, in some kind of grassy park or garden or something, just to give a bit of variety. I can start playing with having unlockable customizables. So say you can choose different artwork on the wall, different music playing, for example. That can all be stuff that the game awards you for getting the highest score on each level. But that's much further down the road. Really far down the road is something that we'll have to see when we get there. But what I'd really like to have is whenever the user inputs one of their anxiety ratings. Let me find a quick video of that. So at the end of each level, you have this slider come up where it just basically asks you how anxious did that level make you feel, and you give it its rating. And I'll have somewhere in the system that will basically graph all those out, and in theory it will show the user their progress, right? You use the system one day, on level 5 you give yourself an anxiety score of 6, use it again next week, and the same level maybe gets you an anxiety score of 4, because that's the point of exposure therapy, right? You do it enough times and you start to become less afraid of that stimulus. What I'd ideally want to do as a stretch goal, I guess, is to set up some back-end server, probably AWS. Everyone that doesn't opt out of anonymous data logging, whatever, all of those anxiety ratings will get pinged off to my server, and then I can have some web page that can basically collate all of that from everyone and have some visualizations of how well this treatment is actually working for people. Something that I was disappointed at with my dissertation was that when I started user testing, that was pretty soon before the first lockdown started. So I had a very small number of test subjects, and then lockdown happened and I couldn't do any more user testing. So what would be really cool is if I could sort of have that research side of it keep going, and having all this data just being publicly available on a website would, I think, be really cool. Especially if it actually works, right? That would be pretty sick. People can look at it and see wow, this actually works. The data's here showing declines in anxiety responses. So, but yeah, that's a long way off. A lot of stuff to do until then. But yeah, a few more levels to do. Got to get the environment in, add a lot of polish and stuff, and then we should be more or less feature complete, which is, yeah, exciting. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have for you guys. I hope this format was okay. I hope it was at least semi-coherent. It's definitely hard to be after doing this after work. But at least it means that I didn't have to spend like an entire 3 days on this video. And I can spend that time working on the actual system instead. So that's pretty good. All right. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you all next time.